I don't believe gear is the most important aspect of photography. I think as long as you have a solid composition and a good story to tell, it doesn't really matter what camera you take the photograph with. But with that being said, gear, for me at least, is what gets me out and motivates me to go out and shoot. And that's primarily why I choose to shoot on a APS-C Fujifilm camera rather than a full-frame Sony or Canon. The desire to go out and shoot is invaluable in my opinion, and that's exactly what Fujifilm cameras offer me. So I'm gonna take you through some of the gear that enhances the overall shooting experience for me. Alright, let's start off with camera bags. The main place where I hold all my gear is the Brevet Jumper Photo Backpack. I've owned this for nearly a year now, and I honestly have nothing bad to say about the backpack. It's made specifically for holding your gear, so it's pretty easy to organize everything. You also get compartments for a laptop or an iPad, and even a place to store your tripod. This backpack is kind of pricey, but I think it's well worth the money, and if you get it on sale, even more so. Now for days where I don't want to bring a whole backpack with me, I did pick up a bag from Willem and Allison's Long Weekend Drop. Not only do their bags look immensely cool, they're perfect for carrying gear for a minimal day. The bag I picked up is able to hold all my film and an extra camera, which is perfect for days where I want to shoot both digital and film. So I definitely recommend looking into long weekend bags, especially if you're in the market for something that's smaller than a backpack, but that can still hold your gear. Okay, let's get into the cameras that I own. Without a doubt, my favorite camera purchase in the last year is the Fujifilm X-E4. This has pretty much been my everything camera for the past year. I've used it for portraits, for events, for street, for documenting everyday life. The compact size of it has just always inspired me. Along with this camera, I did also pick up a flash unit for it, the Fujifilm EF-X8. It's not the strongest flash, but it definitely gets the job done. It helps make the camera a more complete package. Now talking about a complete package, I did recently buy the Fujifilm X100V. I honestly don't know what it is about this camera. I think it's just a combination of the way that it looks and the features that it has. It has just inspired me to shoot every single day and to bring it with me everywhere. I for the most part did have that with the X-E4, but it's honestly just on another level with the X100V. It definitely does feel a lot more premium, and the way that I look at it, once a Fujifilm camera with a new X-Trans sensor comes out, I'm going to be selling the X-E4, but I'm going to be keeping the X100V. That's at least what I'm saying right now, but that's currently how I feel about these two cameras. And I've gotten a lot of people ask which one I'd recommend from the two. It's honestly a tough one. I think the safe choice would be the X-E4, just because you're able to play around with a bunch of different lenses, which can be a really good thing for your photography. But if you're not looking to purchase any other lenses or wanting to fiddle with other lenses, the X100V is definitely the way to go. Okay, so when I want to get my film fix, which has been a lot more as of recently, I own the Konica Hexar AF. I was originally in the market for a rangefinder film camera, but when I got to my local camera store, the camera owner showed me this camera and was just telling me how great it is and how good the lens that it has is. I immediately fell in love with it, and although I wanted something that I could have more control over, the quality of this camera is outstanding, and I'm so glad I picked it up. I do also own this other point-and-shoot Vivitar film camera, but since getting the Hexar AF, I haven't gotten much use out of it. Now this is the camera that I give to someone who wants to shoot some film. Let's get more into film, specifically where I store my film. I picked up this Kodak film canister, which holds 5 rolls of 35mm film. It's just a good and stylish way of keeping film on you. I think I definitely enjoy shooting on Cinestill film stocks the most, but I think the main film stock that I always have is Fuji Superia, just because it's really cheap for a pack of 3. Let's get into the lenses I use on the X-E4. So I own the 23mm f2, the 27mm 2.8, the 50mm f2, and the 7 Artisans 35mm 1.2. These focal lengths pretty much cover everything I shoot with my photography. The 50mm f2 has been my go-to portrait lens. However, with having shot with Faisal a couple months ago and seeing what he's able to do with longer focal lengths for his street photography, I've gotten a little more open to using a longer focal length for street photography. And the 7 Artisans 35mm 1.2 is just such a fun lens, and it fits perfectly on the X-E4. The quality that you're getting for the price is second to none. I may eventually swap it out for the Fujifilm 35mm 1.4, but for now this is covering that focal length pretty well for me. Soon I'll consolidate my lenses even more by getting rid of the 23mm f2 and the 27mm 2.8 because I was kind of filling that void of not having the X100V, but I wanted to include it in here in case you wanted to know which lenses I've used and which ones I'd recommend. The only other lens that I've thought about adding to my collection is the new Fujifilm 18mm 1.4, but I'll probably try it out for a little bit before I do end up purchasing. Music, like I'm sure it is for most people, is a big part of my everyday life, and it can really alleviate some of the stress and anxiety that can come with shooting street photography. My headphone of choice is the Marshall Major 5. Not only do they just look really cool, but the main draw for me in getting these over any other headphones is that the battery life is around 80 hours, I think, which is absolutely insane. It's just nice having a piece of equipment that you don't normally have to worry about whether it's charged or not. Since we're on the topic of music, I have had a lot of people ask me if I have any Spotify playlists, so I'm gonna leave a link in the description to my Spotify profile where I've made playlists of songs that inspire me and just hype me up. So if you've been interested in that, feel free to check it out. Now let's get into where I edit all of my photographs on. I use Lightroom on the iPad Pro 12.9 inch 2020, so it's about 2 years old now, but honestly, it doesn't skip a beat. I love editing photographs on my iPad so much. There's nothing better than after a shoot, going to go eat or grabbing a coffee and editing your photographs. If Capture One does eventually come out with an app for iPad, I will honestly probably make the switch from Lightroom to Capture One. But for now, I love editing on the iPad so much, and my whole entire editing workflow is on Lightroom, so that is why I continue to use Lightroom over Capture One. Instax Printer. The act of giving back to your photography is such a beautiful thing, and owning an Instax printer makes that easy. I own the Fuji wide Instax printer. I did own the Instax Mini, but I honestly just love the larger, wider Polaroid print, and on top of that, the quality print is much better on the Instax wide version. But yeah, it's just really gratifying getting an instant print of a portrait or just a photograph for yourself or being able to gift it to someone. If you shoot Fujifilm, definitely look into picking up an Instax printer. Alright, let's talk diffusion filters for a bit. I've owned a lot of different diffusion filters, but the one that I've kept is the Tiffin Glimmerglass 1. And although I use it a lot more sparingly than I did in the past, it's still fun to play around with and use in different environments. Real quick, let's talk about how I adapt my filters to different lenses. Let's use the Fuji 27mm 2.8 as an example. So this lens has a filter thread of 39. I think for most manufacturers, the smallest filter size that they make is 49. So you obviously cannot use a 49 size filter on a 39 lens filter thread. So you'll need to buy a step-up ring. These are pretty cheap on Amazon, and they'll essentially allow you to use a bigger or smaller size filter on different lenses. So I have a 39mm to 49mm filter step-up ring. I store all of my JPEG and RAW files on these two Seagate hard drives. One of them is 8 TB, the other one is 2 TB. As I continue to take more photographs, I'm going to have to inevitably upgrade to something safer and larger, but for now these two drives have me covered. And then what I initially store my photographs on, SD cards, along with an SD card holder and a USB-C SD card reader so I can edit on my iPad. Something also worth mentioning is that as of recently, I've been using micro SD cards for my Fujifilm cameras. It's just easier on the wallet buying a 128 gig micro SD card than it is buying a regular 128 SD card. But I'll only do this when I know I'm only going to be taking photographs and am not going to be shooting video. Well, that's pretty much my gear, the gear that I think enhances the experience for me and that makes me want to continually go out and shoot. I did also think about including video in this, but that definitely has to be its own video. So maybe eventually in the future, I'll get into my different camera rigs and what I enjoy from that aspect of photography. But for now, thank you so much for all the love and support. I say this every video, but I can't thank you guys enough for supporting me through my power grades and my presets and just watching my videos. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm really happy that I get to create these videos for you all. So I'll see you all in the next one.